My name is Lillian. I stood in the living room of the $425,000 Seaside house I'd gifted to my parents, a manila folder filled with crucial documents in my hands. My brother-in-law, Jack, was yelling at my father, Carl. "This is my house. Get out." My mother, Iris, was pale, holding a dish towel and tears streaming down her face. Carl just stared at the floor, silent and trembling. My sister, Helen, was laughing as if chaos was her birthright. I let Jack finish his rant without a word. He and Helen thought they'd won, that they'd taken over this place. Little did they know what I had in store. 2 weeks prior, everything seemed so much brighter. I'd spent months searching for the perfect house for my parents. Their financial struggles had been a constant weight on my heart. Growing up in a small town, our family barely made ends meet. Carl worked long hours at a factory, and Iris took on odd jobs to keep the bills paid. I remembered how scared I was as a child when creditors called, and how I learned to fake a smile and say everything would be okay. When I finally found the little blue house by the sea, it was like a dream come true. The air that day smelled of salt and fresh paint as I turned the key in the lock. The sunlight filtered gently through the windows, casting a warm glow on the walls. I told my parents I wanted them to join me for a weekend drive. Iris thought it was for a surprise birthday dinner, and Carl brought his old fishing rod, completely unaware. As soon as they stepped up to the door, they started to cry. Carl ran his hand along the porch railing as if he was touching something precious. Iris opened each cabinet and murmured, "It smells like lavender." I'd saved for years. I remembered the night I made the final payment, my eyes blurred from exhaustion as I stared at the laptop screen. I wanted them to have a place that was truly theirs, a haven free from the stress of debt. When I handed them the keys, I said, "This is yours. Every bit of it." Carl's voice broke as he tried to thank me, and Iris laughed through her tears. We sat on the deck, watching the sky turn a beautiful shade of pink over the ocean. For the first time in years, I saw them relax and look at peace. Before leaving that day, I hid a note in the kitchen drawer. It was a simple line meant for the slow mornings and happy laughter I hoped they'd have there. Then I drove back to the city for an important work meeting, thinking I'd given them the gift of a lifetime and that peace had finally found a home for them. But my peace of mind was shattered just 3 days later. Helen called Iris, and by the 5th day, I got a picture on my phone. It was of the same deck, with the caption, "Home Sweet Home," on Helen's social media account. There were her and Jack's kids sitting on Carl's favorite chair, and they were all smiling. I should have known the following silence wasn't gratitude. When I drove to the house that Saturday, I saw an SUV parked haphazardly on the lawn. A loud cartoon was playing inside, and the front door was wide open, with the curtains fluttering in the wind. My heart sank even before I got out of the car. Iris was in the kitchen, her back hunched as she clutched a towel. Her eyes were red from crying. Carl sat in a chair by the window, his hands shaking on the armrest. The place smelled of pizza and beer, and there were boxes everywhere, clearly not my parents'. From the living room, I heard Jack's voice. "The upstairs is for us. The kids want the room with a sea view." When I walked in, I saw Jack standing in front of Carl, barefoot and holding a beer, acting like he owned the place. Helen was lying on the couch, scrolling on her phone with her slippers half off. Iris whispered my name, a mix of warning and plea in her voice. Jack didn't even glance at me. "Family home, right? We're just moving in," Jack said nonchalantly. Helen laughed and added, "Chill out, Lillian. You know Dad can't do stairs. We'll take care of things here." The words family home hit me like a punch. I turned to Iris and asked, "You told them?" She shook her head rapidly, her eyes glassy. "They found out from a photo Carl posted on his old Facebook account." Carl wouldn't meet my eyes. "She said it was okay," he mumbled. The room suddenly felt smaller. Helen's kids ran across the new floors, leaving sand behind them. Jack raised his voice over the cartoon. "Peak season is coming. We can easily rent this place out. I've already made a listing. We need to make this house pay for itself." I stared at him in disbelief. "You did what?" He grinned. "Don't be ridiculous, Lillian. It's family money. It's a family house. Iris tried to speak, her voice barely audible. They just need a few days. Just a few days. I'd heard that phrase so many times before, and it always turned into much longer. I wanted to scream, to throw them out immediately, but instead, I quietly placed the cake I'd brought on the counter. I'll be back tomorrow, I said. Helen rolled her eyes. You're always so dramatic. Jack waved his beer at me. Bring more of that nice wine next time you come. Outside, the ocean was so bright it was painful to look at. I got in my car and held the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. They thought I was leaving to cool off, but I was actually going home to plan their eviction, legally and for good. I parked 2 blocks away and walked back to the house to avoid acting rashly. Anger would only lead to mistakes, and I needed to be precise. I unlocked my phone and opened the folders I'd prepared for this kind of emergency. Screenshots of the Homeowners Association, HOA rules, trust paperwork I'd had my lawyer draw up when I bought the house. At my desk that night, I went through all the documents carefully. The deed was in a trust with my parents as lifetime beneficiaries, clearly stating they had exclusive use of the property. The rental listing that Helen and Jack had put up used the photos and descriptions I'd written, and the worst part was, the payment was going straight to Jack's account. In the group chat screenshots, I saw a message from Helen saying, "If mom cries, she'll give in." Jack replied, "Peak season, baby. Easy money." It made my stomach turn, but I remained focused. I highlighted important parts, printed what I needed, and labeled everything properly. Before midnight, I called the HOA. At first, the woman on the phone was uninterested, but when I read the clause aloud, "No short-term rentals permitted," she went silent. Then she confirmed that violations could be fined and listings removed. I asked for an email confirmation, and she sent it right away. I also booked a locksmith for early the next morning and left a note for him to change the outer lock keypad. I forwarded the screenshot of the listing to the platform support team, attached the deed and trust documents, and sent a short email to the neighbors to let them know there might be unauthorized activity at the house. I didn't sleep well that night. My mind was full of what-ifs. What if Jack refused to leave? What if Helen posted something terrible online? I imagined the look on their faces when their scheme fell apart, and it gave me a small sense of satisfaction. At dawn, I drove back to the house with the manila folder on my lap. The folder smelled of printer ink and coffee, and it somehow gave me the strength I needed. When I walked up to the house, it looked the same as when I left. The blue paint, the white deck, and the palm trees casting shadows on the railing. Inside, the cartoon was still playing, along with the sound of kids laughing and beer cans clinking. Jack waved at me like I was an unwanted guest. Helen's laugh was grating. Iris's face was full of worry. I didn't raise my voice. I placed the folder on the coffee table and laid out the documents one by one. "Everyone, come to the living room," I said calmly. The kids stopped what they were doing and the dog tilted its head. Jack sneered. "This is my house. Get out." I stood by the fireplace, holding the folder. Carl's shoulders slumped, and Iris's face was wet with tears. Helen smirked from the couch. I placed the first page on the table. "Deed," I said, tapping the title. "Recorded last week. The property is owned by a trust one set up. Carl and Iris are the lifetime beneficiaries, and they have exclusive rights to live here." Jack scoffed. "Big words." "It's still family property." I replied evenly, "Wrong. It's theirs, not yours, not mine. It belongs to them." I placed the second document next to it. Trust instrument. I'm the trustee, and it's my legal responsibility to remove anyone who disturbs their peace. Helen's voice turned sweet. "We're just helping. Dad can't manage the stairs. We're just getting settled." I cut her off and dropped the next page, a print out of the rental listing. "Your listing. The whole house is rented out for weekends until August, and the money goes to Jack's account." Iris gasped, and Carl closed his eyes. Jack's jaw tightened. "You're not here half the time. It's only fair." I retorted. "This isn't fairness. It's stealing in the name of family." Helen's tone sharpened. "Don't be so over the top." I flipped the next page to show the text messages. Helen had written, If mom cries, she'll back down. Jack replied, peak season means free cash. The room fell silent. Iris stared at the paper as if it might burn her. I placed the final page.
Hoa Roulette.
No short-term rentals. I've already reported the violation. The TV went mute, and even the air seemed to stop moving. Jack leaned forward, holding his beer. Or what? You'll call the cops on your own family? I replied, I'll do my duty as the trustee. I put my phone on the table, screen up. Here's the email to the HOA board, one to the county recorder, and another to the rental platform. And that's Victor, the locksmith, waiting outside. Just then, a car door shut outside. Helen turned pale. You wouldn't dare. Iris looked at me, shaking. Lillian, do what you have to do. She'd finally given me the permission I needed after years of making excuses. Jack puffed up his chest. You think a few papers scare me? I said, no, reality does. He lunged to grab the documents, but I moved them out of his reach without breaking eye contact. He sneered, your work is just about money. My work is taking care of the family. I replied, my work is protecting them from you. Helen's voice cracked. You're embarrassing us. I took a deep breath. You embarrassed yourselves when you posted Home Sweet Home from someone else's house. Here's what will happen. You'll pack your things, delete the listing, refund all the bookings, apologize, and leave your keys here. Helen laughed hysterically. Or what? You'll kick us out. I said, or Victor will change the locks in 5 minutes, and you can have your tantrum outside. Just then the doorbell rang. The dog barked. That's him, I said. Jack turned towards the sound. Don't touch that lock. Victor walked in, carrying his tool bag. Afternoon. You must be Lillian. I nodded and handed him the authorization letter. He read it, smiled, and got to work. Jack pointed at Carl. Old man, tell her to stop. Carl's voice was shaky but firm. This is our house. We're staying. Iris put her hand in Carl's. For once, she didn't apologize. Jack sputtered. You'll regret this, Lillian. I said, I regret enabling you for so long. This is about setting things right, not being cruel. Helen's kids stopped moving, their eyes wide. Even the dog sat down. I held out my hand. Keys. Jack slapped his keys on the table. After a moment, Helen tossed hers too. Victor's drill made a clean, final sound. A few minutes later, he came out with the new keypad. Codes are set. Who wants to input them? I looked at Carl. You choose. He whispered 4 numbers, his and Iris's wedding month and year. Victor entered them, nodded, and gave me the instruction manual. I put it in a folder labeled Happy Memories on the entry table. Helen watched, her lips trembling. You could have just talked to me. I said, I have been. You just thought my silence was approval. Jack crossed his arms. We'll see you in court. I replied, you won't, because I'm 1 step ahead. He glared at me. You think you're smart? I said, no, I'm just prepared. Outside, Victor packed up his tools. All done, he said softly. The old keys won't work anymore. I thanked him. Iris sank into a chair, still shaking. I didn't want to pick sides, she said. I replied, you're not. You're just seeing things as they are. She nodded slowly. Carl put his hand on hers. The air in the room changed. The cartoon was turned off, and the wind blew gently through the open deck door. For the first time since I'd arrived, the house seemed to relax. Jack and Helen carried their boxes down the stairs, muttering about lawyers and loyalty. On the porch, Helen paused. You think this is the end? I said, it ends when you stop taking what doesn't belong to you. She blinked, then turned and walked towards the SUV. The dog jumped in after the kids, and Jack slammed the door and drove off, the tires screeching on the gravel. As the sound faded, the house seemed to settle back into itself. The ocean waves rolled in steadily. The windows made a soft sound in the wind, as if they were remembering what peace felt like. Iris made tea. Her hands were shaking less now. I didn't want you to see this side of her, she said. I replied, I needed to. Boundaries only matter when someone crosses them. Carl looked at me over his cup. I should have said something sooner. I said, "You did. You called me and that was enough." I opened my laptop and forwarded the HOA confirmation. I canceled all the illegal bookings myself, sending a short note to each guest saying the listing had been removed by the owner and a refund was issued. I also sent a message to the neighbors saying the confusion was resolved and there would be no more rentals. When I finished, I felt a sense of relief. It wasn't about victory. It was about finally setting things right. Iris sliced the cake I'd brought, the one that had sat through all the drama. She laughed at the absurdity of it and gave me a slice. We ate in silence. The icing was a perfect mix of lemon and sugar, sharp and sweet. My phone buzzed with notifications. One was from the rental platform confirming the listing's removal, and another was from the HOA saying the issue was resolved. The last message was from Helen, saying I'd made Iris cry. I deleted it without reading. Carl looked out at the ocean, his profile soft against the window. "It's finally quiet," he said. I nodded. "That's how love should be." He smiled faintly. "We'll get used to this." As the sky turned a deep shade of orange, I put the documents back into the folder labeled Protection. I'd learned that sometimes the most unassuming things can be the most powerful against chaos, and that's how peace is maintained. The next morning, sunlight filled the house. The smell of toast and ocean salt filled the air. Carl sat on the deck, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper he hadn't touched in years. Iris hummed while watering the plants I'd brought the day before. For the first time in a long time, peace didn't feel fragile. It felt earned. Online, the storm that Helen had created died down. Her posts about betrayal and greedy siblings got no traction. The rental platform banned her account, and the HOA sent her a warning letter. When she texted me demanding compensation for emotional distress, I didn't reply. Weeks passed. Iris sent me a picture of her feet on the deck railing, her painted toenails shining in the sun. Carl called to say he'd slept through the night for the first time in ages. That was all the confirmation I needed. One evening, my niece Lily messaged me, "Grandma looks so happy there." I typed back, "Come visit with her permission." No more rentals, just family time. Sometimes, victory isn't loud. It's the quiet after the storm, the sound of a lock turning, and love staying where it belongs. A month later, I drove back to the coast. The house was bathed in the evening light, calm and full of life. Through the window, I saw Carl with his reading glasses slipping down his nose, and Iris sitting beside him, a puzzle spread out on the table, their laughter mixing with the sound of the ocean. I didn't go in. I just stood there, listening to the peace I'd fought so hard for. Here's what I've learned. Love isn't about covering up chaos with kindness or allowing people to take advantage in the name of family. Love is a safe haven with strong defenses, legal protections, and parents who can live without worry. If you've ever had to protect someone you love from their own family, share your story in the comments. And if this tale resonates with you, hit subscribe. There are more stories of betrayal, boundaries, and the quiet justice that sets you free.